One with the price of Bitcoin above $106,000 per coin, you're probably wondering, okay, I should have bought more Bitcoin. Well, of course you should have bought more Bitcoin. We should all have always bought more Bitcoin. So don't feel bad. Totally normal. But you're probably thinking, okay, I'm ready to buy now. What do I do? Like, do I go all in? Do I dollar cost average? And so this video is intended to talk about that. So my default option is whatever amount of money you're planning to invest in Bitcoin, just put it in. Just like go on Coinbase, ignore the price, and just buy as much Bitcoin as you can with whatever financial resources are available to you. And then if you get more financial resources that become available to you, buy more Bitcoin at whatever the price happens to be. If the price dips and you decide you're willing to put more into Bitcoin because the price is lower, great, buy more Bitcoin. But don't wait for a dip, because if you try to wait for a dip, it'll never come. There's still people, when I posted that, everybody ought to be buying at 88,000, there are still people who said, I'm buying at 85,000. Well, 85,000 never came. Like, we haven't seen 85,000 since we were at 88,000. And so, you know, 20,000 of upside has gone by. Um, since then. And in exchange for not getting a 3.4% dip from 88 to 85, now we're, $18,000 to the good. And anybody who didn't buy missed out on that. So do not wait for a dip. But if one does happen and you decide that you're willing to up your exposure to Bitcoin, great, do that. Okay. So let's talk about why I prefer all in versus dollar cost averaging. One, it's worked well for me. Like, if I start deciding how I'm going to invest in something and I have to decide on dollar cost averaging, I tend to get decision paralysis. In fact, everybody gets decision paralysis, because if you're not just going to put whatever money in you're planning to put in, now you have a decision to make, which is how much do you put in of what you're planning to put in? Do you put in a little bit every week? If so, for how long? Do you do that for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years? And what do you do with the money that you're not putting in Bitcoin? Do you leave it sitting in US dollar cash, which is melting like an ice cube? Do you put it in a certificate of deposit that gets 4% interest? There's all these decisions that mess you up if you're not just going to go buy Bitcoin. If you just go buy Bitcoin with whatever financial resources you have available, then it's done. You hit buy and you're done. Like, you don't have to think about it anymore. You don't have to decide, are you going to put some in? Are you going to put a quarter in? Are you going to put a half in, 3/4 in, 2/3 in, 1/3 in? And then are you going to dollar cost the rest of it in? All of those problems go away when you just buy Bitcoin with whatever financial resources you have. Then you just don't have to worry about all those complicated questions. Um, so also historically, just buying Bitcoin has resulted in better returns than dollar cost averaging. Now, there is an exception to that. In a bear market, which is a down market, a pessimistic market, which is called a bear market, in a bear market, dollar cost averaging tends to outperform going all in, but only for small periods of time when the price is consistently dropping. We are not in one of those times when the price is consistently dropping. We are in one of those times where the price is consistently going up. Therefore, I'm not recommending dollar cost averaging, because dollar cost averaging is typically what you do when things are doing the opposite of what they're doing right now. So that's why I'm saying whatever you can afford to buy, just buy it. Like, buy it and be done with it. Okay. So if you decide, let's talk about what dollar cost averaging is, just in case, that's something you want to understand. So dollar cost averaging is deciding that you're going to buy the same US dollar amount of something every single week. Typically, it's weekly. It can be daily, it can be monthly, but almost everybody does it weekly. So you decide, okay, I'm going to buy $100 of Bitcoin every single week. And you can actually set that up on Coinbase in a recurring buy. So every single week, it'll automatically draft $100 from your bank account and buy Bitcoin with it automatically. And I think on automatic buys, they don't have fees. I'm not sure about that. I know some of the different providers have no fees on automatic buys, recurring buys. They're called recurring buys. But I can't remember. I think Coinbase has no fees on recurring buys. But anyway, so you buy the same amount every single week, and you just do that, and you just let it run, and you let it go run until you can't afford to do it anymore, or whatever. So generally that's a good strategy for a lot of assets like the stock market, the S&P 500, because they tend to go up and down, and it sort of, lets you buy a little bit more. $100 gets you a little bit more of it when it's down, and it gets you a little bit less of it when it's up, and it sort of evens out over time, and it keeps you from feeling bad that you bought at the wrong time. But Bitcoin is so aggressive in its price moves that it's way easier with Bitcoin to miss out on the upside. So, for example, with dollar cost averaging in the stock market in general, you could buy at the wrong time, and you're not in the money in the stock market for 3, 4, 5 years, 6 or 7 years sometimes. So dollar cost averaging makes sure you're not in that position. With Bitcoin, you're virtually guaranteed to be up within, and I think the probability, I posted this previously, but I think it's like 97% of the time you're up within 3 years, and 100% of the time you're up within 4 years with Bitcoin. So, and 67% of the time you're up within 2 years. And right now, I think the probability is much better than that, because we're not in a bear market. We're in a bull market, which means an up market, which means a positive, everything's moving in the right direction. But for people who dollar cost average, they just buy the same amount. Sometimes it's $100, sometimes 1,000. I've known people who are dollar cost averaging 10,000 a week. Okay, if you have the financial resources to do that, great. But you tend to underperform. People who are just buying and holding, you tend to underperform by doing that. The other reason, again, going back to what I said initially, the reason I don't like dollar cost averaging is that it forces you to make a bunch of decisions that tend to leave you in decision paralysis, like how much a week and how long am I going to leave it going? So you got to decide how much. You got to decide how long you're going to keep it going. You got to decide, am I doing this weekly, monthly? Am I doing it daily? Like how often? And you have to decide what is your initial position, which means what percent of your money you're going to put it up front before you start dollar cost averaging. And there's like a few more. So in total, there's somewhere between 4 and 7 little decisions you have to make before you can dollar cost average, because it's how much, and how much initially versus dollar cost averaging, and how much, for what period of time and what interval. And, there's a few other things as well. And what are you going to do with the money when it's not in Bitcoin while it's waiting to become Bitcoin? There's just like 7 different decisions you got to make that's going to result in you just not pulling the trigger and not buying the Bitcoin, which is what happens to people all the time. So the main way people invest are just taking the money and putting it in. It's called all in, although nobody's advocating you put 100% of your financial resources in Bitcoin. Even I'm at it was like 97%. It's probably getting close to like 98% now, but it's like, let's call it 97%. Even I'm at 97% of my liquid assets, which is not 100%, although 97% is pretty close. You can dollar cost average, or you can do all in, which means all in of whatever money you have decided that you are going to buy of Bitcoin. You just go ahead and buy it now, which is what I recommend. Or, you can do half and half, which is you take half of the money that you want to put in Bitcoin and you put it in right now. And the other half, you figure out these complicated multi-part, decisions to decide how to dollar cost the other half of it. The fourth thing you can do, if you're not doing all in or dollar cost averaging or half of each, is you can use a method that I think I came up with it myself, but I probably didn't. I've read so many books, I probably got it from some book somewhere, but if I did, I can't remember. So I think I came up with this myself, but it's probably also in 1,000 different investment books that I haven't read, or maybe some I did read that I forgot. Give me one second. And that is that you can invest the amount of money where psychologically half of you wishes it would go up because you have enough money in that you would enjoy the upside, but the other half of you wishes your investment would go down so that you can buy more. It basically guarantees that you never really lose, because if it goes up, well, it's up. And if it goes down, you buy more. But in some ways, it also guarantees you never really win because if it goes up, you wish you wish I had bought more before it went up. And if it goes down, you're thinking, dang, if I had just waited a little while, I could have bought all of my money at the lower price. But it's a great way to dip your toe in the water, and it gets over the decision paralysis of somebody trying to decide, when to buy and how much to buy and all that sort of stuff. It's like, great, let's just make it easy. what amount of money do you want in Bitcoin where half of you would wish it goes up and the other half of you would wish it goes down? So if you put that amount of money in Bitcoin, in some ways you can't lose, because if it goes up, you're happy because your money's going up. And if it goes down, well, you're also happy because you think, wow, I could buy more. And that's what I wanted to do anyway. So sort of guarantees you don't fully win, but it also guarantees you don't fully lose. And it's a good way of psychologically getting over the hurdle of how much do I invest? And, the decision paralysis is like, great, just invest however much makes you, part of you wish it goes up and part of you wish it goes down in price. Then you won't really be disappointed either way. But anyway, regardless, I think now is a fantastic time to invest in Bitcoin. At some point, if Bitcoin's continually grinding down for what appears to be a solid, trajectory, we'll probably start recommending people dollar cost average. Um, I don't think that's going to happen in the next 6 months, probably not in the next 12 months, and maybe never. So, for now, it seems if, any extra money I have every time a paycheck hits every 2 weeks, boom, straight in Bitcoin. No questions asked. It just straight in Bitcoin. I mean, I don't think about it. I don't care what the price is. It just goes any financial resources I can get my hands on or that free up or I realize I'm not going to need for something, boom, straight in Bitcoin, no matter the price, boom, straight in Bitcoin. And then obviously move to self-custody in BitKey for anything other than just, the day-to-day balance I need to keep in Coinbase just to make sure my debit card always works. So everything else I keep in super secure cold storage. Again, I recommend BitKey, bitkey.world is their website, bitkey.world. And anyway, great time to buy Bitcoin. And for all of you who bought Bitcoin in the past, it's been a super fun, especially last 6 weeks. So anyway, and I think we just have a long, long, long way to go before, Bitcoin's going to 500,000 or a million a coin. Easy. Easy. That's before it breaks a sweat and really has to compete with gold. Bitcoin has to go 750% more before it even starts really competing with the price of gold. Gold's worth like 18 trillion and Bitcoin's only worth 2 trillion. So there's a long way to go even to compete with gold. And then we can start debating whether it's 2 times better than gold, 3 times better than gold, 5 times better than gold. So, but regardless, you got 700, you got an 8x, at least 8 times its current value, somewhere between 8 and 9 times its current value, just to get to the point where the total market cap of Bitcoin is equivalent to the total market cap of gold. So we got a long way to go, and it's going to be a very exciting ride for decades to come, but especially the next few years. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.